your Monday is going well. Mine's going pretty well. It's cold and wintry still, but other than that, 2 thumbs up. Okay, we are going to read some more of the Roswell Report. Case closed. We're almost finished. We're just reading a few witness testimonies, questions and answers. I found that to be very fascinating, but we finished the report. I want to know what you all think. Do you really think that they're aliens after hearing all of this? I don't know. Here is my shout out, is a zipper. I cut the zippers out of things. It seems like every fleece jacket I've ever owned, the zipper dies after a few months. It splits. So if I have a jacket or anything that has a zipper in it, or sometimes you buy weird things like bed sheets that come in a package that has a zipper, I save the zipper because the zippers die in jackets and then I have to replace them. I'm not a great seamstress, but I can get myself through the night. I can fix a disaster, but that's about it. And this is my product placement, is a spool of black thread. This is, I've had, I don't go through thread very much, so so it's dual duty, all purpose, 250 yards of thread. I don't know where, I probably got it at Walmart, I don't know. It was in the drawer that I was tidying up. Let's get on with this story, because this is just killing me. We're reading witness testimonies. We're up to questions and answers. Let's see. This was questions and answers from transcript of interview with Gerald Anderson, alleged first-hand witness to the crash site, allegedly 175 miles northwest of Roswell. Okay. Question: did he move around, or just his eyes? Or answer: he just question. Oh, okay. Answer: we went crazy, and it was like, question, like he was scared. Answer: yes. Like he was looking for a place to run and hide. Question: but he never got up. Answer: he never got up. He never left the beings that were next to him. And this red-headed officer, this guy, was a real butthole. He made all the threats. He threatened to have the people shot. Everybody? Question: everybody? Answer: he went, get away, we'll shoot, get away from there. This is a military secret. Just screaming and hollering. He told my uncle and my father that if they didn't want to spend the rest of their life in prison, they would never say anything about what they saw there. And if they ever wanted to see us kids again, they'd take the kids away. They'd never see the kids, meaning me and Victor, that we'd better keep our mouths shut. Because if we didn't, this is what was going to happen. They were threatening people and pushing people. Question: the students as well as Dr. Buskirk? Answer: oh yes, they were hustling everybody. And one of the soldiers pushed my uncle. He had a rifle like this, and he shoved him back like that. Well, that was something you didn't do to my Uncle Ted. Ted had a violent temper. And he grabbed the rifle and reached over the top and smacked this guy and dropped him right there. And Ted would go out and fight heck with this guy. This guy's a cowboy. He'll hit you in a minute. And of course, when he did that, there was bolts open, and I guess they were cocking their rifles. They were pointing guns at people, and everybody, Buskirk and Glenn and Dad, grabbed him, pulled him back and got him away. No, don't, Ted. They're going to shoot. Don't do that. Trying to stop this. And I think we came very close to having someone shot. Then they really started threatening, and they questioned, did the redheaded do all the talking pretty much? Answer: pretty much, except once in a while, the sergeant would chime in, make statements like that to the other people in response to the redhead. But mainly it was the redhead. Question: was there a name tag? Answer: yes, sir, there was. His name was Armstrong. And I'm not sure if I know that from having read it or know that from remembering it and now being able to read it in my memory. Or someone said that to me, but his name was Armstrong. It was right here on his uniform. Question, but he chased you guys away pretty quick? Answer, yes, yes he did. And they herded us up like cattle, and we're just up the area back in that direction we came from over the protest of this Dr. Buskirk, who said, no, no, we've got to go the other way. We came from over there. I don't care where you came from. Get your ass up that area. And they ran us up the area. And question, so you get to your car again? Answer, oh, right. Now they took us up the area, and just over the hill we came down. They broke us off and moved us up the hill. Now this whole time, no one has ever frisked us down. No one has ever checked our pockets to see if we picked up any of this material. And this girl, Agnes, still had that stuff in her pocket, and some of the other students and stuff. To my knowledge, up to that point, they had not been searched. Whether they did so afterwards, I don't know. They never searched us either, ever. They ran us back up the hill, and when we got to where the car was parked, where Dad had parked the car up there, there's a Jeep with a guy sitting in the back, and there's a mounted machine gun in the back of his Jeep, and all these soldiers. The Jeep pulls out. We're told to get in the car. We follow the Jeep, and the soldiers go with us all the way back into the highway. When we get back out to the highway, they set us right there. They wouldn't let us out of the car. They wouldn't let us move forward. I don't know whether they were making any decision or what. When we got out to the highway, this place was absolutely full of military personnel, military equipment. There was airplanes sitting out there. They had all landed on the highway. Question, did you see any airplanes when you were back at the site? Answer, yes. There was airplanes in the sky, but nobody thought much about. I didn't think anything about it. I was used to airplanes being in the sky, having been raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, the home of the Norden bomb site. The sky was always full of military aircraft at night. And when we get back on the highway, there's observation aircraft, high-winged aircraft. And there's one of what I know now to be a C-47 setting there. And how we didn't hear that land is beyond me. And how it landed, well, of course, I guess you could land it if you were a good pilot out there, as there were no poles or anything. And they had torn the fence down on the north side of the highway, and all this equipment was setting back up there. The plane was up there, and they were taking stuff out of the plane. There was military ambulances, and there were trucks with the wreckers, cranes on them, and there was tankers maybe had fuel or water in them. There was just everywhere. You look, there was military. Question, a major recovery operation? Answer, yes, it looked like an invasion force. It really did. And they were all wearing these light khaki uniforms. They didn't look like, olive drabs. They were light khaki, and they all had the same patch over there, that kind of blue funny patch with the circles on it. Good morning. Hey, Matt, how are you? Good to see you. With the circles on it was on his shoulders and a lot. Yes, good to see you. Do you have a clue as to where they came from? Did your brother or uncle? Answer, no. I don't know where they came from. Yes, Matt, good to see you. Did your brother, no, I don't think anybody ever ascertained that. There were a lot of MP patches, and some of them were wearing nightsticks off of these webbed utility belts. They had nightsticks, and they had 45s and holsters, the automatics, full holsters. And these were the people that were giving most of the orders. They had the road barricaded off out there, and we sat there for a very long time. And, we were getting thirsty, and everything we asked if we could go back to the Horse Springs to get some water. Oh, no, you can't go through there. All right, after that, they said, now you just turn around and you head out of here now, and you go to Socorro. And this is the redheaded again. Keep your mouth shut. Just keep going and don't look back. Well, as we drove away, Dad, to hell with it. We'll go to Magdalena. We'll get water in Magdalena, because that's where John Trujillo lived, a relative of Ted's. And so as we drove away, I was looking out the back window and could see Dr. Buskirk and the kids, and that guy. The guy in the pickup was standing there, and this Dr. Buskirk was doing just like this, and in this redhead officer's face and kept pointing back behind him. And I guess that meant, we've got to go back that way. And he was fed up with this guy or something, and he was shaking his finger in his face when they were yelling at each other. And that's pretty much the last I saw of the whole situation. I don't know what happened after that because we just kept going. The end. And now we are up to the transcript of interview with W. Glenn Dennis, alleged first-hand witness to the events at the Roswell Air Force Hospital. Question: you started getting calls from the base mortuary office, is that right, sometime in the afternoon on some day in July of 1947? Right after. Answer: right afternoon, yeah. Question: do you recall, was that before the story appeared in the Roswell Daily Record? Answer: I don't know. I'm sure it was. I can't honestly say, but I don't think the paper came out until the next day. I'm just assuming that. Question: I understand. When things like that happen to me way after the fact, I try to remember, and I wasn't sure if you had any recollection or not. It was the base mortuary officer who called you, not any of the MDs out there. Answer: no. Question: he was just the mortuary officer, was just the guy? Answer: we used to have a standing joke. What did you do that was so bad they made you the mortuary officer? Question: exactly. Answer: he wasn't a doctor or anything, but he was an officer, and he was probably some old boy that was trying to figure out something to do with. We used to have all of them come in, even the officer himself say, God, I didn't know I screwed up that bad. Question: question: I realize that. You don't remember what his name was or anything like that? Answer: no. I'm like Bob Shirky. I think if I would see it or heard it or something, I might. Those guys were in and out. The mortuary officer, usually they would appoint some sergeant or somebody. The only time the doctors were involved is when you'd have an embalming inspection or dress inspection, when the doctors came in and examined the body to make sure everything was right. You had another inspection to make sure their dog tags, make sure their medals and everything. They always had two crews of inspectors. The doctors were only involved in the case of death or the autopsies or identification process, dental charts and all that. After they did their work, then a doctor would always come in and make sure the body was embalmed because they know more about it than the other people. But they were involved before, Question: the reason they contacted you was because Burt Ballard's funeral home up here had a contact with the base, right? Answer: yeah. Question: you worked for Burt for a lot of years, didn't you? Answer: yeah, a long time. Question: when did you first go to work for him? Answer: I went to work for him. I was hanging around the funeral home when I was like a freshman in high school. I'd want to make some extra money. I'll give you 50 cents to wash the hearse. I knew his daughter real well. We were all in school together. That's where I really got involved in the funeral home. I just kind of worked my way in. Question: he basically taught you the trade and all that? Answer: oh yeah, my folks weren't in the funeral business. Question: the reason I was curious about it was because when I went back, I'm one of the guys that goes to Washington and this gets fed up and leaves and swears I'm never going to go back. And then I go back anyway. But the last time I went back and did that, I shared a townhouse with a guy for a while who was a mortician from Michigan, but he had to go through all this formal training and all this rigmarole. Answer: no. That started in Inaudible. Maybe you don't want to hear this, but I was in the 9th grade, and this teacher was going around and wanted us to write a composition on what we wanted to be when we graduated from school. What were our future plans? I was kind of a wise guy, I guess I must have been, but I said undertaker, and I don't even know why. All the girls squealed, so I got a little attention. Then she said, okay, if that's what you want to do, then you've got a week. You bring me your composition. I want to know why you want to be an undertaker. So I went to the funeral home. They didn't have any books in those days or anything, but that's where I went. That's why I got involved in it. That's where it started. Question: how long were you in the business before I know you ran the Worley Hotel up in Lincoln, New Mexico? Answer: oh, that was after I retired. Question: oh, I see, you retired from the mortuary business. Answer: oh yeah, I was in the funeral business 33 years. Question: all the time with Ballard? Answer: oh no, I had my own funeral home over in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and one in Socorro, New Mexico. Question: oh, okay. Speaking of that, do you know Norman Todd or his family? Answer: his dad and I took the state board together. He was at Clovis, New Mexico. Norman's his son, isn't it? Question: yeah, he's a lawyer over in Las Cruces, New Mexico. His answer: wasn't his dad the funeral director in Clovis, New Mexico? Question: I think so. The reason I know him is because Mike Cook, who is Steve Schiff's press secretary, and he have been friends ever since they were in kindergarten together. It turns out that Iris Todd, I guess, his stepmother, is the niece of Loretta Proctor. So talk about a small world. You got these calls from the mortuary officer who was asking you all these questions. We don't have to go back through all of this. Then at some point, you decided to go out to the base. What took you to the base? Answer: at some point, I didn't decide. That's not correct. Somebody wrote that, but I don't think it's right. The way I ended up out at the base later, we had the ambulance service. The way I got it, the ambulance service, I got a call, was an airman that was hurt. I took him to the base. The best I remember, he wasn't on a stretcher or anything because he walked up the ramp and he sat up in the front seat with me. So he weren't real bad and weren't dying anyway. This guy walked in, I walked him in. Where I usually park the ambulance, there was a field ambulance there. I had to go back up to the front. The airman and I walked up the ramps. That's why I went to the base. Question: the hospital in those days was apparently a complex of buildings, right? Answer: yeah, kind of like Bob Shirky said, the officers club, like the officers club. They're all wooden barrack types. Question: so the building that's out there now, the rehab center, is a completely new building and had nothing to do with that? Answer: A2. Bob Shirky: no, think of a long walkway like a tunnel attached to the front of a series of question. I know just what you're talking about. Answer: with a little breezeway between each building. The best I remember it was, isn't that right, Bob? Answer to Bob Shirky: yeah, here is the building and you came in out of the front door and you went down this walkway, which I just said like a tunnel. You could see from one end to the other, but all these separate buildings, which were different wings of the hospital. Question: that was the infirmary where you took the airmen, right? Answer: there were some ramps there. I think the old ramp's still there. Anyway. That's the kind of buildings they are. You don't see it today. No. Question: I knew that the building, most of it, was new, but I wasn't sure if they built into it. Answer: that had been worked over 2 or 3 times. Question: when you look at it, it's been one of these things where they've added things to it. So you pulled around behind the infirmary, basically. Answer: it was a pretty tight squeeze in there. You couldn't get very many cars in there. Question: how many of those ambulances were back there? Answer: there were 3 old box ambulances. I call them box ambulances. I guess you call them, I wasn't in the military, so I don't know what all the terms were. Question: like these old field ambulances? Answer: they've got the old square field ambulances, you know? Question: the airman walked up that ramp with you. Both of you guys went into. Answer: the airman and I both went in. Question: did he see that stuff in? Answer: he wasn't paying any attention because I had a tourniquet and a towel over his busted nose, and he went right on in. Question: got himself into a little trouble in town, did he? Answer: rode an old motorcycle. The reason I remember it is because He had an old Indian motorcycle. I just bought one. I paid $40 for one, and he rode one, and I didn't have any fenders, and I was thinking of maybe question. So you took him in there, and then basically after you got him taken care of, you figured you'd go look up your friend, the nurse. Let's get that straight. Answer, Stan Friedman, I think. Somebody thought that I was having a relationship with this nurse. I was not. This girl wouldn't even think about going with me, and she was going strictly. When she got her time paid back through the service, she was going into an order of the nuns, sisters, and she was going to be in education, and later on she changed to the nursing deal. The only reason she was in because her folks were in debt, and she went into service to get her education. She got her education, and then she was going to pay back the church what they owed her. Her whole thing in life was, from the day she was born, her life was planned that she was going to be in an order. Question, did she ever tell you which order that was? Answer, it was in St. Paul, Minnesota. That's all I know. Question, there's where she was from. That's where she was from. Answer, that's where she was born and raised. She never went out of the city until she went to, my understanding was she never went anywhere, and she never lived anywhere. She was raised up from the time, strictly raised by the church. That was the only life she ever planned. She wouldn't date a man if her life depended on it. She'd get around and talk and everything, but there was no way. But everybody said I was going to marry her. That was bull. Question, the implication was that she was cute, and answer, she was cute. I could have been interested if I wouldn't have played second fiddle to the Catholic Church, because that's what she would have been. Question, how did you get to know her just being out there on the base? Answer, the ambulance service. You go out there and you've got your splints on a guy. You've got first aid, whatever you can just throw them off with your stretcher. You maybe help them. Sometimes you're out there for 2 hours or 3. Then while you're waiting to get your equipment back, you sit in the coat room with the doctors and with the nurses' quarters. That's where we always had our cokes and stuff. Question, so you just shoot the breeze with whoever's around? Answer, you get to know these people. That's the only way. She'd only been there less than 3 months. Of course, I'm a crazy son of a gun. Nearly everybody remembered her. She was a good-looking little thing, a beautiful little girl. We thought she was kind and lonely. Question, as you well know, there's been a major effort to try to find her. Then it says in brackets, the tape is skipped. Answer, she was out here less than 3 months. Question, so you went back there? Tell me what happened. Answer, I started back there, and that's when I got in trouble. I saw this officer standing there, and I saw this debris in the back of the ambulance. 2 of them was full of debris, like Bob Shirky saw a bunch of little stuff, and there was a couple of pretty good sized. 2 of the 3 ambulances had stuff. Answer, one of them's door was closed, but the other 2, there was 2 MPs standing right out, kind of just leaning up against the back of those, I remember. Question, did they challenge you when you tried to go in? Answer, no, evidently because I drove up with the airmen and they just figured whatever. Another thing, when I was there, all the people that was there, that nurse was the only person I saw that was permanent station. Everybody else was all new in that whole hospital operation. Even in the coke room, there wasn't anybody in there that I knew. I started back and got to the door, and I saw this. Pause. We've been friends for years, but I don't want to talk with him around. Question, so the stuff you saw, you said it was not aluminum. Answer, looked like hot stainless steel when it got hot. When you put flame on stainless, see, I do sculpture work and all that, and I know what the stuff looks like. Question, oh, you're a sculptor? I didn't know that. Answer, yeah, I've been doing it for years. I had my own foundry. I don't do it anymore. I have my stuff done. But anyway, this stuff was a blue purplish. It looked like hot stainless steel when it was heated. Steel that got hot. It didn't look like aluminum. It wasn't even melted like aluminum. I don't even think it was melted, just like a bunch of fragments. Question. But there was some bigger things in there besides the fragments, right? Answer. Yeah, there were two pieces. Anyway, do you want to go back to the nurse? Answer. Yes, please. Question. Answer. I started back, see, and this captain was standing there, and naturally I just thought we had a plane crash. When we had that, we used to fill up the ambulance and everything else. It would be for you to have a hand here or an arm or a foot or something, you know what I'm talking about? Then you've got to get in and take all that stuff and separate it and put the bodies back together for identification. That's what you've got to do. I thought we had a crash. I saw this guy, I didn't know him. He was standing there at the door. Question, just inside? Answer, just kind of standing, like in between the door of this room up there. I was going to go down the hall. I said, sir, it looks like we had a plane crash. Do I need to go in and get ready for it? Question, this was an officer? Answer, yeah, he was a captain. I remember the bars on his inaudible. He said, who are you? I told him I was from the funeral home, and he said, wait right there, don't move. Then he came back. That's when the two MPs came up. When the nurse came out, we started down the hall, and that's when somebody in the back of us said, bring that son of a bitch back. That's when the red-headed captain asked where the sergeant came in right there. Then they took me out. As I was going down the hall, she came out of, like Bob said, out of this room, and there were two guys in back of her, and they all had towels over their face. She saw me. She said, Glenn, what are you doing here? Get out of here. You're going to get in a lot of trouble. How did you get in here? She said that 2 or 3 times. She was sick. Question. This is when you were talking to that first officer? Answer. Yeah, he just told the MPs to take me back to the funeral home. Question. He had just told them that, and then she appeared at that point? Answer. He told them to take me to the funeral home, and we started down the hall, back out to the hall, and that's when she came out of another room with these other 2 guys. What happened, she told me the next day, they were all sick because those little bodies were in those sacks, and 2 of them were very mangled, and the smell was horrible, and 1 was whole, and 2 of them were badly mangled. Question, did you get a whiff of that stuff yourself? Answer, no, evidently not. If I would have known what it was. I worked on a hell of a lot of stuff. Question, in that tape, you talked about working on floaters and all that kind of stuff. Answers, you know. Question, I've had professional experience in it, but I've been involved in it. I haven't had professional experience in it, but I've been involved in it. Answer, in New Mexico, you've got this hot 100-degree stuff, and you've got bodies out there 2 or 3 days, and question, this red-headed guy what was his rank? Do you remember? Answer, I think he was a captain. It seemed to me like he had on some bars. Question, when he first appeared and started getting essentially pretty rough, was the sergeant around at that time, or did he show up? Answer, he was kind of beside him. I think they were standing there. Yeah, they were definitely standing there together. I don't know if they walked in together because I didn't see them until they turned me around. Question, was there a lot of activity at that time? Were there people? Answer, people were everywhere. And the odd part of it was there wasn't any of our regular people. These were all people that I'd never seen before. That's why I got in so much trouble. I'd never seen these guys. These were not any of the guys that would ordinarily recognize you as somebody who would answer. And they sure as hell didn't want me there, you know that? Question, when he says get out of there, the redheaded, did he make any threats to you, himself? Did he say, don't say anything about this, forget it? Answer, He said just like that. He says, now listen, mister, you don't go back into town starting a bunch of damn rumors. This guy swore as much as I do anyway. He said, don't start a bunch of damn rumors because nothing's happened out here. There's no plane crashes. Nothing's happened. You don't go in and start. Then he told the MPs, get the son of a bitch out of here. That's when I said right then, I said, look, mister, I'm a civilian and you can't do a damn thing to me. You go to hell. That's when he said, listen, mister, somebody will be picking your bones up out of the sand. Then the black sergeant said, sir, he would make good dog food or something like that. I remember the dog food. The next morning at 6 o'clock, the sheriff was out at my dad's house and told my dad, Glenn may be in a lot of trouble with the base and tell him to keep his mouth shut. I never told my story to anybody, but my dad came up. I was living in a room at the funeral home. He came up and got me out of bed and wanted to know what I'd done. He was a very patriotic old man, and he said, if you've done anything against our government, I'll take care of it. Question, when was this? Answer, the next morning. Question, you were saying what the heck, what's going on? Answer, yeah. I said, well, hey. He said, George Wilcox, the sheriff, and my dad were real good friends, and he said, George tells me you're in a lot of trouble out there. He wasn't going to leave, and I told my dad the story. He got all upset because they threatened me and all this kind of stuff. I didn't see the nurse then until the next day. After I saw her then, I kept calling. When I got back to the funeral home, I started calling because she was in trouble and so was I. Question, it was the next morning after you'd been hustled out there that your dad came by to see you? Answer, yeah, 6 o'clock in the morning. Question, he'd been called by the sheriff. Answer, the sheriff went to my mother and dad's house, and at 6 o'clock. My dad always got up early, sat and had coffee. He was an old carpenter and building contractor. He and George were old friends because he used to go hunting and Dad was making gun stocks, so they were good friends. They used to play some kind of domino games or 42, whatever you call it. They were good friends. Question, so the sheriff went by to see your dad? Answer, Dad said he was there at 6 o'clock. Question, the sheriff came by early in the morning and then your dad immediately came from home and came to see you? Answer, after George Wilcox left, my dad came up to the funeral home and wanted to know what I did. Question, did your dad say why the sheriff? Had the sheriff been contacted by the base? Or answer, no. He just said he was concerned about what I'd done, how I'd gotten into trouble. Question, do you remember what he told you about the Wilcox, what Wilcox told him? Answer, he just said George said I was in trouble at the base, and what did I do? Question, then after having this rude awakening, you then, did you call the nurse? Answer, well, yeah, this was in mid-morning. I remember I finally waited until it must have been 9 o'clock or so, and I called. I knew the workstation that she worked at. She was a general nurse. They didn't specialize, just orderlies, and everybody was on general duty in those days. I was informed that she wasn't there. She wasn't working. She wasn't working that day. Question, it was one of the other nurses that you talked to? Answered, yeah, it was an old girl by the name of Wilson, Captain Wilson. I asked her, I said, what happened? She said, Glenn, I don't know what happened, but she's not on duty. I'll try to get the word to her that you want to talk to her. She was wanting to talk to me, but she was sick. She was in total shock. Question, did she tell you that later, that she was sick? I knew she was sick. She came out with that towel. She said she and 2 doctors were sick. Then at the officers club, she said, I want to know what happened to you. And I'll tell you what happened to me. The only way we ever got to the officers club, the old regular group said, you don't go anywhere. You keep your mouth shut. They said that. The old group, they would have known us. It probably wouldn't have mattered. But these people didn't know us. And of course I had a pass and I had an associate membership at the officers club, the funeral home did. So I could go as I pleased. I had free access to the base. Question, did you meet her at the club? Answer, she said she'd meet me over there. She was sick. She said, I'll meet you there. Question, when you got there, she was at the club? Answer, She was walking up when I drove up. She walked over. It wasn't very far from the hospital. Question. She walked from the hospital or answer? From the nurses' quarters. Question. Let me back up the event with the MPs. They physically hustled you out of the hospital. Answer. Well, they didn't carry me out. They said, come on, we're taking you back. One on each side. They didn't have their hands on me or were forcing me. Question. I've forgotten which one of the accounts has them lifting you right off your feet and all that kind of stuff. Answer, no. They may have got me by the elbow, but that was that. They were nice guys. They were doing what they were told to do. Question, they got you to the ambulance? Did they follow you back to the funeral home? Answer, one followed me in a pickup and the other sat in the seat with me. Question, oh, I see. He actually rode with you in the ambulance? Answer, he rode with me and the other one drove a pickup and picked him up. They had a pickup. Question, did the guy riding with you say anything about what was going on? Answer, he said he didn't know what was going on. That was the first thing I said. What in the hell's going on? Do you know? He said, you know more about it than we do. Something familiar to that. I don't know the exact words, but he didn't know anything. Question. Now we're back to the officers club, and you met her there. When you saw her, how did she look? Answer, like a nervous wreck. Her hair wasn't combed or nothing. She said she'd been sick all night, crying and everything else, and she was still crying. She was hysterical. She put her hands over her face and said, I can't believe it, the most horrible thing she'd ever seen. She was really in bad shape. Question, you called her and wanted to get in touch with her to talk with her about what happened? Answer, I was curious. Question, did she seem reluctant at first to talk to you about it? Answer, no. She said, I've got to talk to you. I want to know what happened to you. She said, I've got to talk to somebody, and that was it. You know, I'd seen her a lot. I knew all those old girls out there, you know. Question, did she give you any indication of any reason to believe that she had been told to keep her mouth shut about it? Or answer, well, yeah, because I'll tell you what. She had this drawing on the back of a prescription pad, these little bodies. It was on the back, a little small thing on the back of a prescription pad. She said, I'm going to show you something, and you have to give me your sacred oath that you won't tell anybody when you got this, and you won't ever mention my name because I will get in a lot of trouble. That's what she said. I will get in a lot of trouble. Question. She didn't say specifically that somebody had. Answer, no. She just said, I will get in a lot of trouble. Will you do that? I said, sure. She showed me that, and she had written on the back, like I had it on the back of that. You have my drawing where I said, note and all that. That's what she said. Question, she let you keep that? She gave it to you? Answer, yeah. She said, you look at it and you throw it away. I never did. I went and I took it back and put it in my personal file. Question, which subsequently got tossed apparently? Answer, well, all of the files got tossed. Question, what happened? Answer, well, the funeral home, I hired some guys. The manager up there was there before I left, and Raymond said that he doesn't know because when he was working up there was another manager, and he said he thought Joe Lucas told him, inaudible. Of course, Joe and I weren't very good friends, and we had some problems over the funeral business, and he said, Joe found my files. He said, I know he went through everything you had. He and I had a partnership in a business, and I put up all the money, and all of it went sour, and so we had problems. Question, you and Stan Friedman actually made an effort to try and find that, didn't you? Answer, we went down there. The old file was right where I said it was. It was still there, but it was, Stan will tell you, we went down in this old basement, and I knew exactly. See, I keep files on every case that I was involved in, murders, anything that I went to court on, that I was a witness on. I kept all of that. I called those my personal files. If I had to go back with the insurance companies or anything, I had it all right there. That's why I had those. Question, You found the filing cabinet, but there was nothing in it? Answer, no. We went through it. There wasn't a thing in it. Stan and I both. Question, they stripped it out, or was there other stuff in there? Answer, there wasn't anything in there. Question, after all that excitement, then what? Did it just kind of evaporate? Answer, it just kind of evaporated. Then, of course, 2 or 3 days later, I was concerned about her because she was sick. I took her back to the nurse's quarter and let her out. I called back the next day and they said she wasn't on duty. And I called the next day and they said she wasn't on duty. Then I went out there for some reason I don't recall. I went out there and I asked about the lieutenant and they said she'd been transferred out. They said she'd been transferred out yesterday. Well, that was the day after I saw her. They got her out the next day. Question, who told you she'd been transferred out? Answer, I don't know, some nurses. Question, it wasn't anybody that you remember? Answer, no. Question, did they tell you where she'd been shipped to? Answer, they didn't know. They said she had been transferred and that's all they knew. Question, but then you heard from her subsequently? Answer, about 3 or 4 weeks later, I got a card addressed to Ballard Funeral Home. It was from her. And inside of it just said, just a short note. She said, we will correspond later to see what happened to each other. Something similar to those words. She said the only way you can contact me is through the APO number. And there was an APO number. It was a New York APO number. Question, so she'd gone to Europe or someplace? Answer, then right at the bottom she says, I'm in London. That was it. I wrote a note, just a note, that said if you feel like it and you get time, then I would love to know and we'll correspond. Mine came back. That was about 3 or 4 weeks later. Mine came back. Question, that was the one that was marked deceased? Answer, yes. It said return to sender, addressee deceased. Question, then what did you do? Answer was inaudible. Question, you didn't try to follow up or see if there was any possible answer? No. I asked, at the time we called her Slats Wilson, a big tall nurse, 6'2", 6'3", a big tall skinny girl. We called her Slats. Everybody called her Slats. She's the only one that told me she'd heard that there was a plane crash and she was the nurse that went down on a training mission. She said that's strictly rumor. I don't know anything about it. That's what I questioned. No one's been able to turn that one up at all. Answer, I guess maybe. I should never even mention this. I know no one believes the damn story. Nobody believes this story. Question, I don't know if that's true. Answer, anybody. It was anyway, it was a hell of a story. I told inaudible. I said, I told the woman, I don't want to give her name because I told the lady I'd give a sacred oath and I didn't want to get involved. Well, it's been 45 years, almost 40 years, and I haven't heard anything. He said, I will do it confidently and nobody else will have this name. Well, that's where he broke his promise after that. I got all over him about it. I called him and broke his promise, and I was madder than hell. He said, well, Bob Shirkley was the one that told everybody that he was sitting in the back of us. Bob brought Stan Friedman up there when he interviewed me. He said Bob Shirky was the one that let out her name. To this day, Stan Friedman still says he did not put her name out. I've been on several shows, not several, but 2 or 3 interviews, and I'm not going to mention her name. If somebody says this is her name, I'm not going to say it is or it isn't. I told Stan I was madder than hell about it because I did give my word. Question, there's another side to it too, from the standpoint of those who are trying to get some answers. By not having her name around, it makes it easier to cross-check the stories that you get from people you have. It's a question of honor, and that's very sound. I applaud you for that. There's not too many people around these days that are concerned about that kind of thing. And it's also, from an investigator's point of view, an advantage too. Answer, I've never read this stuff. I've never watched the videos. I've never read any books. I haven't even read Stan's books. I haven't even read Kevin Randall's book, only what they say about me. Friedman is a lot more accurate, but you see, question, you mean about me. I've read that. That's the only thing I've read. I'm not a UFO guy. I've got another life besides UFOs. But anyway, Stan Friedman's story is pretty well right. But Wrangel and them was always said I got curious. I didn't get curious. I went out there on a call, just like I told you. Question. The section of their book that refers to you is really kind of cryptic anyway. Answer. They said the book was already published. Now they had a copy. Friedman sent the copy of my tape. They had they had my tape. They just made that up. Somebody did. Question. I was puzzled by it when I read their book. That whole section where they refer to you, and it's all very mysterious, and your name is not referred to in the table of contents, but you're in this list of people that's been interviewed, but you're not one of the key people on the list. Answer. They never did interview me. Question. They never talked to you at all. Answer. No, not personally. They didn't interview until a long time later, a year or so later. They only had Stan's tape. Question. So when they were actually writing their book, answer, the book was already published. Question. When they were doing the writing, they were working from Stan's tape. Answer, evidently. Question. Who was actually the first UFO investigator to get in touch with you? Answer, Stan Friedman. When they had unsolved mysteries here and different ones, there was a lot of people. I'd get different ones. I'd have different people come and say, we want to talk to you about the UFOs. And I said, I don't have anything to say. I don't want to talk about it. And I've never did. I've talked to very few people since. Question, how did Stan come to find you? Answer, one of the guys that I went to school with, the high school, Captain Harry Blake, he's a general now. Question, is he still on active duty? Answer, no, he's retired. He was just a general in the military school, National Guard, I don't know. He never was really a good friend of mine. We lived across the street from each other when we were kids, so that's how Stan found you. He was the first guy to talk to you. Answer, Bob Shirkey brought him up there to see me. Question, there is a reference in here to you having some years later, I think, talked to a pediatrician that you knew, a guy that was stationed. Answer, I can't find his picture and I don't remember his name. I ran into him when I was fishing up in Colorado and we ran into each other. Question, this was a guy who was at the time stationed here? Answer, he was here and they called him in. He said that was out of his field and he didn't want anything to do with it. Question, they actually called him in and asked him to take a look at what had been retrieved? Or answer, he said they called him in. I don't know. He said, but I said that was out of my field and I didn't want anything to do with it. That's what he told me now. Question, did you get the sense that he knew more than he was telling? Answer, I wouldn't say so. Yeah, I'm sure they did. A lot of those guys out there did. Question, you don't remember his name? Answer, hey, good to see you. Answer, I don't remember it, but I did run into him somewhere. I've got his name. Question, did you talk with anyone else? Had you during that time before you got into all of this? Good to see you, baby world. Thanks for coming. Question, answer, no, I wouldn't have even talked to him about it. He brought it up and I wanted to know whatever happened on the UFO business. Question, it was at his initiative? Answer, I didn't bring it up. I told him I didn't know any more about it than he did. He said, well, that was strictly out of my field and I didn't want to get involved. That was about it, but he brought it up. I didn't ask him. Question, he was just curious about what happened? Answer, wanted to know whatever happened to it. Question, that's about all I've got. And that is the end of that one. So we have a few more transcripts, which we'll read those tomorrow. Then that'll end the book. Well, let's see here. There's one that's only a half a page. 1 page. Well, let's just finish it. It's only a few pages. So then we'll finish the transcript. This one is transcript of interview with Alice Knight, alleged secondhand witness to crash site 175 miles northwest of Roswell. Answer. I remember that he saw, one time I went to visit, and I don't remember whether it was before my husband and I married or after, I don't recall the date, but he said that he saw a UFO fall. He was out working in the field, and I understood that he was out on the St. Augustine Plains, and he went over that way and it fell and he got nearly to the site, and there was a group of people on geological or archaeological hunt, and they were over there. I don't remember how many people he said, but they got nearly up to the UFO, but it was close enough that you could see some creatures. He said they didn't look like human beings out there, and along came government cars and trucks. Question. Now, by government you mean? Answer. I guess it was government. I said it was a long time ago, and someone came along and I don't understood it. I don't know whether it was Army or what. I think he just termed it government trucks, and they told him to go on back and forget they ever saw anything. And that's all I recall. And that was the end of her testimony. So now we are up to transcript of interview with Vern Malteus, alleged secondhand witness to the crash site, 175 miles northwest of Roswell. Answer. He, the eyewitness, had been coming back from one of his field trips. He'd run into a flying saucer that had burst open, and there were 4 beings on the ground, and that he was surveying the site. Archaeological group from University of Pennsylvania telling us that there were about 4 or 5 people with this group. As they were just starting to look things over really closely, the military moved in and gave them a briefing not to say anything about it and keep quiet, and it was in the national interest to get out of there. Question. What was his feeling about what it was that he had experienced? Answer. He had no qualms about what it was. He said it was a vehicle from outer space. There wasn't any questions. The beings on there were nothing like, not exactly human beings. Question. How did you answer? Similarly, but not exactly. Question. How did he describe them? Answer. He described them being about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, very slim in nature, and with their heads were hairless, with no eyebrows, no eyelashes, no hair. Sort of pear-shaped head, with the top of the heads being larger. Question. Any other characteristics about their appearance? Answer. Only one thing that he mentioned. The hands were not covered. They had 4 fingers. Okay, we are now up to, that was the end of that transcript. Now we're up to transcript of interview with James Ragsdale, alleged first-hand witness to the crash site north of Roswell. Ragsdale James, eyewitness transcript, January the 26th, 1993. DS, so you were actually out there? JR, yeah. DS, do you remember the name of the ranch it was on? JR, it was on Fisher. DS, was it north of here? JR, yes, back out here. DS, northwest, just take your time. JR, it was Foster, some discussion with his wife about who owned the ranch. Let me see what you've got, referring to the photographs. That's the place right there, identifying the location from the pictures. DS, what area? JR, it seems to me that the place belonged to Fisher, but it's sold to somebody else. Somebody else bought that. That's how come I was out in that area, and we was out there, and she's dead, and all the guys I showed this stuff are all dead. It's amazing what all went on. Discuss our book and the museum. DS, showing one of the pictures. So you think this looks like? JR, looks like the place. DS, as far as the ranches go, driving around at that time, it could have been most any ranch, right? This would have been in 47. You were with this woman. JR, yeah, we were camped out there. DS, you were camping? JR, yeah, I would say half of it. I would say that only about half of it, just half of you really couldn't tell what it was. What you could still see where it hit. I think it was 2 spaceships flying together, and one of them came down and the other one picked up what they could and got out of there. DS, is it possible that because it was hit by lightning that it broke up and part of it went down? Discussion of the Mac Roswell sighting. JR, but it was either dummies or bodies or something laying there. They looked like bodies. They weren't very long, over 4 or 5 feet long at most. We didn't see their faces or nothing like that, but we had just got to the site and heard the army, the sirens and all coming, and we got into a damn Jeep and took off. We had to hold a fence up to go onto another ranch to come out from there. DS, how far would you say this from town here? JR, 30 miles, 40 miles. DS, in a northwesterly direction. JR, right up here. Discuss the pictures again. DS, were there any buildings? JR, no, you couldn't see anything. You go up on top of the hill. It was a hill, referring to the pictures. You could see the stuff right here. DS, the object, the craft. What was left of it in these photos? Where was the object? Along this JR, along this right here, it looked to be about half of a round, because around the edges I had two great big pieces. That's what they got when they stole the car. You could take that stuff and wad it up and it would straighten itself out. I never seen anything like it. Looked like something between a plastic, looked like a carbon paper. DS, that was the color of it. JR, yeah, carbons. That was the color of it. Sure was, between plastic and hell, I don't know. Let's see how to describe. One piece we had, you could take it and put it in any form you wanted and it would stay there. You could bend it in any form and it would stay. It wouldn't straighten back out. DS, you picked those up from the ground. JR, yeah. DS, you threw them in the Jeep, stuffed them in your clothes. JR, yeah, and then we heard all of them coming. DS, how many vehicles? How much commotion did you hear as they came in? JR, oh my God, it must have been, it was 2 or 3 6x6 Army trucks, a wrecker, and everything. And leading the pack was a 47 Ford car with guys in it, MPs and stuff in it. We had the windshield down in the Jeep, and we stayed in the weeds and stuff. And we came back down to where we was camped at. DS, so you watched for a while? JR, yeah, sure did. DS, what was there? JR, they cleaned everything up. I mean, cleaned it. They raked the ground and everything. I mean, they cleaned everything. DS, you didn't stay there that long? JR, no, but they had a truck. I would say it was 6 or 8 big trucks beside the pickup, weapons carriers and stuff like that. DS, what kind of car? What kind of guard did they have? Did they surround certain areas? JR, they had MPs all. They got way out in the field. They had people all along this ridge. They drove up there. We was back over here, this grass here. DS, so if you were back here, could you see the activity down here? JR, you couldn't see too much of what you couldn't tell. As soon as they got there, they began gathering the stuff up. We were hidden in what you call buffalo grass. DS, did you see any behavior around the bodies? JR, uh-huh. DS, you couldn't see down to that level. JR, yeah. DS, yes, good morning. Hey, good to see you, Big Paw. Good to see you. You couldn't see down to that level? JR, yeah. Did you see any activity near the craft? JR, no. DS, the angle of the craft, was it flat? Was tipped? JR, one part was kind of buried in the ground, and part of it was sticking out of the ground like that. DS, about a 30-degree angle. Yeah, I'm sure that was bodies, either bodies or dummies. DS, why do you say dummies? JR, the federal government could have been doing something because they didn't want anyone to know what this was. They was using dummies in those damn things. They could use remote control. DS, so you thought that it could have been an extra experimental craft? JR, after I came down, showed Frank Willis and his son. He's dead. The Blue Moon Beer joint over on the old Dexter Highway. He was there until 2 o'clock in the morning. I had the Jeep behind my car. DS, did you still have the scrap in the Jeep? JR, yeah, I showed it to him. He said I would just keep my mouth shut. He said, hell, there's no telling where that came from. DS, so you didn't think it was from outer space? JR, no, we didn't even think about outer space back then. DS, When was the first time that you thought that maybe this was something more? JR, it was about 3 weeks. It came out that a spaceship had crashed at Roswell. About 3 weeks, but it could have been out longer than that there. But I worked in Carlsbad, DS. But you first saw there had been a newspaper article about 3 weeks after. JR, oh hell, it was 2 or 3 weeks before I caught up with it. A spaceship, what I hear is they guarded that place for a long time out there, because me and another fellow went out there and you couldn't get, they had all the roads sealed off. It was a month or so after DS, and they still had it cordoned off. JR, the MPs and stuff were still on the road. They wouldn't let nobody go out there. DS, if a person were to drive out there today going north out of town, are we talking 285? JR, no, Highway 48. You go out 48. You go out here to the truck route, hit 48, and it's about 40 some miles out in there. And Node talks about the car being stolen in 51 when the car with the debris was stolen. I would say 18 inches and 30 inches long, strips off the edge of it. It was a heavy material, but it didn't have no ridges. It was put together with some kind of solder like stuff, no pumps, no nothing in it. It was about as heavy as duraluminum. It wasn't as brittle. You could take a small piece and it was flexible. Then discuss the stealing of the car with the wrecker, and then material was locked in the trunk of the car, and then discuss the break-in of the house where the last of the pieces were stolen about eight years ago, 1985. DS, was there a storm that night? JR, yeah, there sure was. It was a whole whale of a storm. DS, did you hear anything unusual? Did you hear between the cracks of thunder? JR, well, it lit up the sky when it came down. It lit up the damn. We thought at first that it was fallen star or something, and electrical lighting. Man, it was something. DS, you heard something and you saw something. JR, yeah, sure did. Because we were laying there in the back of the pickup. The whole sky lit up. We thought it was a star falling. DS, did you then go to check it out? JR, sure did. The next day, sure did. We drove right up on it. She picked up a piece of it, and we had the Jeep parked a little ways from there, and throwed a piece of it up there somewhere. And I have tried to find where she throwed it. She had a piece, but when she saw the army coming, she throwed it out. She saw them coming and she throwed it out. I doubt that I could even go back to the place. It's been so long. Now begin to talk about the car wreck that nearly killed him. Reminder of the tape is discussion about the car wreck, the ranchers in the area, and the murder of Mrs. Ragdale's brother. And that's the end of that. Oh, and that's it. Then now we're just up to this selected bibliography and the index. So that's the end of the book. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, now I'm confused, because earlier in the book, all the government summaries and so forth just said it was balloon testing, high altitude balloons and crash test dummies. But then reading the actual witness statements, now I'm confused, because the witness statements seem to say that it was an alien, but the government says it wasn't. So I don't know what to believe now. What do you think? I mean, like I said, I have met people who have had UFO experiences, and I believe them. I have never personally ever had that experience, so I don't know. I believe the people that I talked to. They said they saw what they saw, and I believe them. I don't disbelieve them, but I don't know how much can we believe the government, if you know what I mean. We've just been reading the Roswell Report, case closed. And it is a government document. I ordered it from a library, from the government documents, and it's a reference book. I was surprised I was allowed to check it out from the library, being a government document and all, but I'm pretty sure you can find it online. Let me see if there's an ISBN number. And I'll read the ISBN number, because that way you can always ISBN number is 0-16-049018-9. So you can Google the ISBN number and find your own copy, or go to any of the online booksellers, or if there's I actually have a Barnes and Noble still in my neighborhood. Somehow it managed to survive. You can order books, or you might even be able to find it in a used bookshop, I don't know. So you can read for yourself this very, very interesting document. And the government, I mean, I'm sure if you go to New Mexico, to the Roswell area, or to Las Cruces, even Albuquerque, Belen, maybe. I'm sure that these books are pretty big out there, considering it all took place in New Mexico. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know what you think. So we finished that, and now I'll have to find something else for us to read. This is my shout out, is my zipper. It seems like every fleece jacket I buy, the zipper dies really within a month or two after buying it. I don't know why the fleece jacket zippers break. But when I have something with a zipper, whether it be a jacket or any other item, if there's a zipper and then I don't need the item anymore, I will dissect it and keep the zipper, because I will most likely need a zipper at some point. And my bathrobe needs a zipper. I'm probably not going to replace that one. It's a big fluffy bathrobe. It splits, it gets so that it splits, and then it's ruined. I don't know what makes it split, but anyway, this is my product placement, is my spool of thread. It's this black spool of thread, a very staple item to have emergency surgery on a garment if something goes terribly wrong and you've got to fix it. Let me know you were here. Leave your link, you leave your information, because then I will visit your channel and I'll watch your videos, because I'm really very fascinated with what you do. And give me a kiss. Have a wonderful Monday. If I don't see you tomorrow, I'll see you at least one more time this week, because I've got to try to find another story to read. So if you have anything that you're interested in, I can perhaps find it in my library. I live in a big area where the library has all kinds of books, and then I have access to a reference library that if they don't have the book at that library, I can request for the librarian to borrow it from a different library. So they'll borrow a book from a different state, even all the way in Virginia, like this book in Georgia. I've gotten books all the way across the country. I've never gotten something from a foreign country yet, but I'm wondering if that's a possibility. But have a good day. See you later. Happy Monday.